Bonsoir et bienvenue pour Tête à Tête. Aujourd'hui, nous voyons position la compagnie Air Seashells dans les temps difficiles face à COVID-19. Il y en a un airport qui est fermé pour passagers commerciaux et la compagnie a besoin d'assister, réassister son opération. Avec nous aujourd'hui dans le studio, il fait moi un très grand plaisir pour accueillir chef exécutif Air Seashells, ça c'est M. Remco Althuis, pour donner nous un petit peu plus de détails qui Air Seashells peut faire dans ces temps difficiles. Mr. Althuis, good evening and welcome to the show. And thank you for accepting our invitation on Tête à Tête.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Air Seashells recently announced that it is focusing on cargo flights because, as you're aware, there are no passengers coming to Seychelles. The Seychelles International Airport is closed and there are travel restrictions in place. So far, these flights have been to Dubai and Johannesburg. And why these specific destinations? And is this feasible, this new approach, is it feasible for the company?
Yes, it is feasible. As you know, we have two brand new Airbus A320neos, which have quite a bit of cargo carrying capacity. And we have been planning to get cargo on our passengers' flights for a week prior to launch. On a normal average week, there is about 150 to 170 tons of cargo coming in by air to Seychelles to support the economy, fresh goods, all kinds of supplies, spare parts. And clearly with the halt, the stop of passenger movements coming into Seychelles, all of that dried up immediately. And increasingly we heard from the market that there was a need for us to start flying out to the nearby hubs to pick up that cargo. And a lot of the cargo globally gets collected at the big hubs of the world. So Dubai is our closest hub, closest to Seychelles. Abu Dhabi is another one. Johannesburg is the largest airport in the whole African continent. So cargo from around the world gets collected there, and then it needs to be flown to Seychelles. And that's where we come in to use a team of people to fly to those destinations to pick it up.
So would you say that it's more than you would do with normal passenger commercial flights? The company will earn more by doing cargo flights instead of passengers?
Well, what is happening globally right now, there are 15,000 aircraft that are parked, that are not flying at all. And a lot of cargo is is transported in the bellies, in the cargo bellies of the passenger aircraft. So because the supply has been limiting, there's less flights and therefore less cargo opportunity, the cargo rates have gone up. So it is actually now more economically feasible to fly a cargo aircraft, even if it's relatively a small aircraft and it was never meant to carry cargo. An Airbus 320neo has, depending on how far you fly, about 18 tons of weight, of capacity, of load that it can carry. And normally it's mostly passengers and baggage, carry-on baggage and suitcases. Of course, now we don't have any of that. That means that all of the carrying capacity of the aircraft can be allocated to cargo, and we can carry that. And normally in the holds of the aircraft, where the bags are normally stored. That is, of course, one big area where we can store baggage. But now we can also, after going through certain measures, carry cargo in the cabin, on the seats and on the floor, and also in the luggage bins.
How safe are those flights for the crew members?
Well, I mean, the flights are safe to the extent that before having been able to do this, we have gone through a rigorous process what we call a risk assessment. So we get all the people from flight operations and from cargo and from the Ministry of Health and also cabin crew, flight training. We get them together and we say, what are the risks if we do this? What do we need to do? How do we need to prepare? The risk assessment is then shared with our regulator, in our case is the Seychelles Civil Aviation Authority, who have to approve it and give a permit for us to do so. And there's guidance from Airbus, who has certain stipulations, say, okay, this is how you could do this. And other regulators, for instance, the EASA, the European Air Safety Authority, that helps us and says, okay, this is how you could do this. We do the risk assessment ourselves. We send it to the regulator. They have to give it an approval. They say, okay, you're okay to do this. and then we can start. And then the next phase is going through the operational process. How do we want to get the cargo on the flights into the cabin? And clearly, we want to avoid any risk for Seychelles as a country, and that's why we have come up with a process whereby the interaction between the people inside the aircraft and the people that load the cargo in the destination, in Dubai, is kept to an absolute minimum. We take some people to Dubai and to Johannesburg or anywhere else who take the boxes that come up to a door by one of those conveyor belts, and they carry them one by one on the floor, on the seats, and then they work their way towards the back of the aircraft.
Limiting the contact.
Limiting the contact, yeah. And so there's actually no contact at all between people on the destination and also the people who work on that aircraft, the cabin crew, the loaders, or the engineer, or the pilots. No, none at all. And on top of that, everybody who works on those flights is wearing full protective gear. So they wear a coat, they wear gloves, they wear a mask to avoid any kind of risk. I think in the second phase, what you will see happening is after when it's now happening more and more, that the cargo, before it gets loaded gets fumigated. So they basically disinfect it with kind of a foggy mist that contains disinfectant, and then of course that limits the risk even more.
But even with all those precautionary measures, some staff, some crew members, some Air Seychelles staff would not feel at ease to be on that plane, to make that flight. Are they being forced to go on those flights? How does it work?
No. So we understood that in the beginning, because this is all new and people say, well, I don't feel too comfortable doing this. We asked for volunteers to operate the flights. And because it was new for everybody, people didn't know what to expect. But now we have done 2 already. The third is today to Dubai. And of course, colleagues tell each other and say, actually, it's not so scary. And now we have more people who say, well, actually, I want to go on a flight. And all what we did on the first flight, quite a few of our senior people, for instance, our chief operations officer went with the team to watch what happened. Because what we have done after we operated 2, we had a full debrief of, okay, what went well, where can we learn better, what can we do better, and to improve the procedures going forward.
You said earlier that a lot of planes are actually parked now, so they're not operating.
Yes.
Is there a need? Is there a need for this service for Air Seychelles to operate in other countries, to assist other countries? Has there been a
we have received requests. You have to right now. Mostly medical supplies is crucial, and clearly the further you get away from a big hub, or the smaller the country. But for instance, in case we have received a request to ship some medical supplies from Réunion to the Comoros, to Dzaoudzi. And even sometimes when there is a critical spare part that is needed, for instance, to keep a factory going, people are now sending one aircraft to pick up just one element. There's hardly any flights anymore on the African continent, hardly any. And I think we will continue to get those requests going forward. And so every time we go back to the Ministry of Health, do you think it's safe for us to do it? Then we get their approval. If we get it, we go.
But this is a temporary measure until the restrictions, travelers' restrictions are removed.
Clearly, because it's also a matter of economies of scale. So once the bigger aircraft come back, then the belly space becomes available, the cargo rates will come down, and then it will be more difficult for us to compete, obviously. But for as long as Seychelles needs critical supplies, medical supplies, perishable goods, maybe some fruits or vegetables, critical spare parts, and other goods and products to keep the economy going, to keep critical parts of the economy going, we will go and pick them up.
Mr. Althuis, we have to agree that this has sort of unfortunately happened at a time when the company just acquired a new aircraft, Seashells, the A320neo, and many people were saying why now? Maybe Air Seychelles should have cancelled the lease because it's not a bad time to be doing business. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, clearly the lease was signed 18 months ago. And the lease, that's a contract. And that the contract says that if the aircraft is ready, we need to pick it up. well, at least we need to pay. So we need to pay. And so we said, well, if we need to pay anyway, we might as well go and pick it up, because then we can use it, replace the older, much less economic aircraft, because the Neo has much better fuel burn, so it uses less fuel, and so the economic numbers are so much better. So we send the old plane away, we get in the new one. It is here, because if we have to pay for it, we might as well use it. Leases are signed for 9 to 12 years. And it's a decision you don't take lightly, and that's also why the contracts, you can't just say, well, I don't want it anymore, because you're contractually obliged to pick it up.
But then again, people will say, can you afford to pay the lease? Because I remember for the last plane, the first Neo, it was $300,000 per month. So I don't know if it's the same for this second aircraft.
It is the same, yeah. It's roughly the same.
But can Seashells afford that?
Well, what happens is aviation is a very cash constrained business. You use a lot of money for the operation. If we don't fly, we basically have two main costs: salaries and lease cost. On the lease cost, we have reached out to our lessors and say, listen, we have this asset, we don't have any revenue for it. Can we get a holiday on
sort of a grace period?
Yeah, a grace period for the payment. And they have agreed. So that means that for the next few months, our lease payments will be extremely limited. And that, of course, will help us get through that phase. And the other part is staff costs, salaries, and clearly there the government of Seashells has been gracious enough to help us.
When you say limited, you want to divulge how much it will be?
Well, I mean, they're nearly completely covered. It's just that it is, we have to understand, it is a holiday. The money doesn't go away. It's just that from a cash point of view, we don't have to pay it short term. We have to ultimately pay it back at a later stage. But the good thing is that we have the flexibility to make the payments once the revenues start coming back.
But the company is not thinking about returning the plane and cancelling the lease. No, this is not in the plan.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, because we need to keep flying, and I think now more than ever, it is obvious that because Seychelles being so isolated, we need connectivity to the outside world, and not for passengers right now, but clearly for cargo, and we have to have the assets to do it. And planes are machines. Sometimes they break down, and even if, let's say, if an aircraft were to break down here, nobody would come and bring the spare parts. And now we have a second plane that can at least go and get the spare parts for us to fix the plane. So that's why one is really none. You really need two to be able to do that. And well, fortunately, they're both very new. They fly beautifully. No technical problems whatsoever, knock on wood. So until such time, we just continue flying and supporting the economy and get the goods in for as long as it's needed.
And of course, the company has a 5-year plan to restructure its operation to make it more profitable. And of course, now this is being challenged, of course, with the COVID-19. How badly do you think it will affect Air Seashells?
Well, like I said, it all depends on how long it's going to last, and nobody knows that. For right now, with the government support and with the lessors, we're not spending that much money right now. And of course, we make sure that every time we operate a cargo flight, it generates some profit, and we don't do it below the costing price. So it generates revenue and some additional cash. Not much, but at least some. And so we can continue to do that for a while, but at a certain moment, if it goes on too long and there's no revenue coming in, and the lessors say, well, I really need a payment from you now, then of course it'll be more difficult. But we really don't know how long it's going to last. It really depends on that.
But what is the financial projection for the company? You must have done a projection for, like, because we're in April now.
Yeah.
How do you see this fiscal year?
Well, the fiscal year, we will definitely not make budget. I mean, in the budget discussions that we're currently having with the shareholders, we don't foresee hardly any revenue coming in for April, May, and June. And then from July onwards, we expect it to slowly start building up. And well, it's a crystal ball, but we hope by last quarter we'll basically be at the level of where we were from a budget point of view. And until such time, we need to ensure that our costs are kept at the minimum, and we don't spend any money, and then we will be okay.
And of course, in its 5-year plan, Seashells decided to focus on regional routes because it was less costly than to do the European routes. And do you think that a new strategy to bounce back will be to look at other routes other than the regional one?
Well, it'll depend very much on how the tourism will bounce back. I mean, Seashells had 380,000 visitors last year, and it was going really well for the country, but also for us for January and February. Depending on when it comes back. And where the customers come from. We know that Europe is a hotspot right now. Some countries will get out of this pandemic earlier than others. And I think what is very important that together with the Seychelles Tourism Bureau, with the trade partners, with the hotels, we have a targeted strategy to say, where do we see the demand coming back? Ultimately, I'm very confident it'll come back. It's a matter of what markets will be first, and will there be connectivity with those markets?
There could be a void.
Could be a void because it's also the economics of the other operators. They're not going to fly here immediately with all of their aircraft and the frequency that they used to if there's no demand. And if it is a market that we can reach, we can clearly look at it. With the NEO, we have the capability to fly 6.5 hours, which means that we can come to Tel Aviv like we are demonstrating. And not beyond, but if push comes to shove and there is demand and there is a tour operator that says, I have business, I want to come, and we partner with one of the hotels and one of the DMCs and say, we see this market has potential, let's make a plan to go there. And with a fuel stop, we can basically fly anywhere, right? To the east, to the west, to Europe. That's not a problem.
So you'll be looking at all those opportunities.
We'll look at all those opportunities. Yeah, I don't think we will get a big aircraft anytime soon, just because of the risk, and our experience hasn't been very positive. But you never know. I mean, no, you never know. But I don't see it happening. No, not anytime soon.
Okay, and of course, the government had announced plan to assist Seychelles financially starting this year with $6 million for the next 5 years. Yeah. And we know with all that is happening, this might not be happening this year because the budget that has been presented shows a fiscal primary deficit of negative 14%. Do you think that Seychelles will be able to cope without any assistance from the government this year?
No. In this period, all airlines around the world are reaching out to their shareholders and also even for privately traded airlines, they're reaching out to the countries where they are based. Global aviation is a big enabler of globalization, of international trade, of tourism. It is very cash-rich business. So the cash goes out of the company very quickly when you stop flying. And so, no, anywhere around the world, including Seychelles, shareholders will have to help get through this period.
So you will need assistance.
Yes.
The company will not go belly up like we have to close down and we can't move on.
I think what we are aiming and also I think demonstrating right now how important it is for Air Seychelles to keep flying and to keep the country connected to the outside world, because right now there's no flights at all coming in. We are still here. We're operating. We can bring in cargo now, and once the government says, okay, it's safe now for people to move in and out, and we will definitely take that opportunity and start moving people as well.
And ground handling did very, very well last year. I think it went up by a growth of 5%. It was really good. Yeah. Do you think this will ease a little bit the situation
Well, right now also because there's no flights coming in.
Once the flights start coming back.
Yes, clearly. I mean, it is the same. We are asking our suppliers to see if we can get a break on the rates, and in the same token, clearly also. Our suppliers, so to the people that we supply the ground handling service to, are asking for the same. But I think once they come back, we will see the revenues starting to come in immediately, which will clearly help support the overall bottom line of the company.
I know that the government recently announced that nobody will be made redundant during this time, and Seashells recently laid off some staff. Do you foresee this happening during, well, after this period is over? Maybe the company will not be able to cope. I know that the government said they'll be paying the salaries for the next couple of months, but after that, do you foresee any redundancy plan for Seashells?
Like I said, it is extremely hard to predict. We don't want to, obviously, because Seashells is a critical part of the connectivity of the infrastructure of Seashells. So if we can avoid it, we definitely will. But we have to. It all depends on how long it's going to last. We just don't know. It is up to us, to myself and the team, to ensure that we are prepared for when it bounces back. And when it bounces back, we are as economic and we are as good and as we possibly can be. So we have done everything we can to make it a very viable commercial operation. And January, February this year were good for us. We were way ahead of our budget. So that that demonstrates that we know how to run this company and what we need to do to ensure that it's profitable, at least feasible for the longer term, that we can continue flying. And we will give it absolutely everything we have to ensure that happens.
Is the 5-year transformation plan on hold, or is it ongoing?
No, we continue with everything we've done. I mean, the second NEO was a big part of it. There's still some things internally that we can look at. How can we reduce distribution costs? How can we reduce reservation costs? And we have to take a decision on systems in the future. And we will continue to look at that, at least prepare for it, so that once the business bounces back, we are ready to be in the best possible shape we can in, with a cost base that is very competitive, so that we can access markets and transport people and goods here and actually make some money of it. Well, I mean, it'll never make us rich. Aviation will never make you rich because it's highly volatile. It is very capital intensive. Planes are expensive. You need a lot of people, but we have to ensure that we do everything in our power to ensure that the business is viable and that the cost base is competitive, and then we can offer attractive fares for customers to fly to the Seashells or via the Seashells to their markets.
Is the plan to fly to Australia still on the table?
Well, the Australia plan was something that I said, which I maybe should not have said. So the answer is not concretely. There was a question on whether the Airbus 321 XLR, which is the next generation of the NEO family, would be an option for us. And it's fantastic technology because it allows an aircraft to fly up to 10 hours with very, very competitive cost per seat. It's still a narrow body, so you don't have the exponential cost of a big aircraft like an A330 or a 777. But you can fly long range, and it's not so big that you take that the commercial risk is very high, because it's not like 250 or 300 passengers. It's basically 175. You can fly to Rome, and you can fly to Zurich, and you can fly to Perth. And when I asked that question, I mentioned Perth, and I should not have said it. It was very, very dumb for me to mention, because no, we don't have Perth concretely on the map right now, and we're not even considering that aircraft concretely right now, because we're so focused on the next day and then coming through this period this year and the 5-year plan. And also we have to be honest, that aircraft is not going to be technically coming on the market for another 3 to 4 years.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the domestic operation, because it is being suspended as well, so people will not be able to fly between Mai and Praslin on Seashells. Why is that? Well,
so we had up to 25 round trips per day. A lot of those customers on those flights were overseas customers that arrived at Seashells International Airport and then went on holiday on Praslin, at many, and La Digue, many of the guest houses, the resorts, the hotels, all that. Clearly, as soon as Italy came under lockdown, those numbers started to come down because those people were not allowed to come to Seashells anymore, and therefore they canceled their flights on Emirates, on Qatar, on Turkish, and consequently the domestic flights. So we saw the demand drop from 25 to 2, because all we had left was domestic customers who were basically brave enough to take the domestic flights, and not brave because of the technical state of the aircraft, but brave because of the being on an aircraft with 12, 14, 17 other people. And now, of course, since the rules about social distancing have been put into effect, we comply with those rules, and we said, we can't do this anymore.
But could you still fly, but with fewer people on board?
Well,
because there is a market with people traveling between the islands.
We could, but we also looking at the numbers. We need about 50 customers a day to break even, and we saw that on some days we were reaching 47, 44, but then on some other days it really went down to maybe 20 or 17. And we decided, for instance, for tomorrow we had 0 bookings. There were just no bookings at all anymore. And they said, well, you know what, we're going to stop this for the time being. And then if there is a request from somebody working in essential services, PUC or the health department or anybody that really needs to go, we will ensure that we have an aircraft with a crew on standby, and our engineering department can come prepare it, and then we can go within the hour. That is the approach we have chosen.
Before we end this program, we know that Seashells usually get a lot of negative comments, and people have lost faith in the company, always accused of wasting taxpayers' money, of always being in need of extra money. And during this time, we can see that Seashells is stepping up, as you said, doing the cargo flights, and at the same time helping the country, because, well, Seashells has a plane that can travel to and from the island. What is your message to your staff?
I have to say that I am extremely proud of all the 727 people at Air Seashells. Everybody has really rallied together to prepare what we needed to do to operate these cargo flights. It looks easy, but it's not. There's a lot of work that goes into it, into preparation, ensuring that we do the proper risk assessment, that we don't compromise on safety, that we reach out to the regulator and say, are you blessing this? Is this okay with you? And then the commercial team, you have to understand that we've been normally doing a lot of cargo handling. Now we're also doing cargo selling, so overnight we'd have to also increase those commercial capabilities in the cargo team. And really everybody has really rallied together. We have a good vibe going, and I couldn't be more proud. I mean, I really think they deserve a big round of applause for stepping up and really helping out, working very long hours. The people that go on a cargo flight to Johannesburg, or that was a 16-hour working day for the people that loaded. They didn't physically work 16 hours, but before they left and came back 16 hours later. So,
and of course they can't stay overnight.
They can't stay overnight. They have to come back, and they get a meal, and they have water on the flights, which we load for them, obviously. But no, everybody has really done a fantastic job. And I think with that spirit and also with that team, not only for Air Seashells but for the whole country, I really believe we can get through this. It is it's very discomforting, and it's disorienting, and we're all kind of confused, and we don't know yet what will happen. But I think that through solidarity and staying close to each other and exchanging information, working as a team, we will get through this.
And financially, when you see things, you hope to see things improve.
Well, I mean, if the demand bounces back in the last quarter, so I would think we see bookings coming in for the last quarter. So for October, people are booking now for Christmas time, and so hopefully in 7-8 months' time, we should be back where we were. But it all depends on how quickly the outbreak is contained, and clearly also on vaccines being available.
Thank you, Mr. Althuis. Really appreciate the fact that you made time to speak to us on TêTE à TêTE.
You're most welcome. I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Et voilà, c'était chef exécutif Seashells, M. Remco Althuis, avec nous dans sa N programme. Il nous a aperçu que la compagnie peut réajuster dans les temps difficiles, quand bien sûr nous connaissons il y a un COVID-19 qui peut aussi affecter la compagnie aérienne. Alors, si vous souhaitez ça un programme inintéressant, bien sûr, nous pouvons rendez-vous semaine prochaine, même là, pour un autre tête à tête. Et jusqu'à ce que nous rejoignent, porte bien, passez une très bonne semaine et bonne continuation, le SPC. Au revoir.